All right, today is December 9th, Tuesday, 2025. I am scheduled for the work study session of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It is 6:01. I am Michael Faith, the chair of the commission. I hereby call this meeting to order. The agenda and packet are available on the Field's website. The video recording of this meeting can be seen the very next day. And the two is pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On item 3, A is a citizen review. So this is a time for public discussion related to the proposed zoning code text amendment regarding section 31 for accessory structures. We just going right into
Chair, yeah, I don't have a good rationale for why the citizen review comes ahead of the staff presentation. I will go into much more detail regarding our conversation tonight on accessory structures. We have residents who were invited to come to this meeting as accessory structures has been a hot topic as of late, and frankly, over the past couple of years. So I think we'll hear commentary and stances on both sides of this discussion this evening for your consideration as I move into the technical review of this conversation.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead and start. We have only one request to speak, so if anybody else has a request to speak, please make sure you turn it in. John Blackwell.
Good evening. I feel a little bit unprepared because we're doing it in reverse order. I was planning on probably either interjecting or commenting after kind of the proposed changes. Not knowing what they are, it's really difficult to sort of speak on them. Obviously, we have some code in place that, to my knowledge, needs to be enforced or revised. That's about all I've got in terms of things that I had to say about it, because it seems today that we have a lot of accessory structures within the city that don't meet the code that's in place today. And so having a resolution to that is something to great benefit.
That's all. Thank you very much. All right. Seeing no other requests to speak, anybody else have requests to speak at all? Okay. We'll move on to item B, which is our presentation by Committee Roach. Discussions regarding related to the standards and setbacks of accessory structures.
Chair, thank you. And maybe I'll use Mr. Blackwell's conversation starter to start there. There is no change proposed this evening. This is the work study session to gather feedback from the 7 of you commissioners, and we will have the same sort of discussion with City Council in January to get feedback, get ideas. I have no conclusions reached. I have only research prepared of what is and what other cities are doing. As anytime we think about doing any sort of change, we don't want to be the nail that sticks out and gets hit. We want to make sure that we're in line with other beliefs. Accessory structures has been an ongoing conversation. We've had a number of folks working through situations that code enforcement situations, and through our attorney have been somewhat put on pause as far as enforcement goes until we could have this conversation this month and with City Council next month to see if there is a direction that is consistent we want to take. So what I have for you this evening is essentially what has been provided in your packet. I've provided the same excerpts from the packet to our residents here this evening, just so we can all look at the same thing at the same time. I have highlighted some sections I'll speak more on later in the presentation. And as always, since this is a work study, this conversation interrupts me. I'm going to run out of gas at some point, so your questions are appreciated just to give me a break, quite frankly. So where accessory structures comes from is section 31 of the zoning code. specifically, the following 9 standards of sorts is what a lot of the conversation is going to be about tonight, but we want to just lay it all out for you, and I'll be happy to read. Except as otherwise provided in subsections D 2 through 8, meaning everything that follows this number 1. Accessory structures shall be located between the rear property line and the principal building, and shall be set back at least 5 feet from the rear and the side, and at least 10 feet from the principal building. This is not arbitrary by any means. Where this comes from is the idea that any structure can catch fire and will catch fire. The idea being that you're 10 feet from your house means that if one catches fire, it does not catch the other on fire, because 10 feet is what the fire department deems an appropriate separation to not spark one or the other. We do the same thing for neighbors. Everyone does 5 feet on their side of the property line. Therefore, that 10-foot gap is maintained across neighbors as well. Historically, that's always made sense. I think we'll see in upcoming slides, not all structures are as combustible as they used to be. And some cities have acknowledged that in some changes that they've made. But again, that's your discretion and council's discretion whether it makes sense to open the book and look at any sort of changes. For now, this works for insurance. This works for separations to make sure that we do not have an emergency situation just in case. Number 2, here's the irony. Screened accessory structures 120 square feet or less in size may have a 0 setback. For some reason, if you go get the Tough Shed at Home Depot and it's a 4-footer, it's a 6-footer, and it is lower than your wall, you can put it against the wall. Why we have a reduction of standards for something that is a reduction in design, I'm not sure. It's a bit misleading, that situation, but I'll keep going through this just to get a full picture. 3, accessory structures with a height greater than the height of the opaque perimeter fence. I don't know what an opaque fence is. That sounds like wall to me, but this hasn't been rewritten in a very long time. But 10 feet in height or less shall be set back from the property line at least 5 feet. This just goes in line with what was already stated in 1. 4, now what's the occasion when it's above 10 feet? Accessory structures more than 10 feet in height shall be set back from property lines 5 feet plus 1 foot for every 1 foot of height over 10. It's called a step back setback. So if it's a 5-foot setback for a 10-foot high structure, it's a 6-foot setback for an 11-foot structure, 7 for 12, and so on and so forth. Some people are overburdened, I'd say, and maybe that's a bit of showing my hand, but for corner lots, accessory structures shall be set back the required street setback distance. The street side setback is the same as the front setback. We have front setbacks that go from 20 to 40 feet, meaning if you're in that situation and you're a corner lot, you're looking at a 20-foot setback from the street side, essentially putting it on the opposite side of the house. 6, storage accessory structures used as a garage and located on an alley shall be set back no less than 4 feet from the rear property line and are not subject to step back requirements in subsection D4 of this section. This is for the redondos, those sorts of situations where you do have alleys. It is a 4-foot setback, not for you to try to squeeze your car parallel and not block the alley. The 4 feet is for you to make the swing with your car, because if the garage was set against the alley, there's no way you're making that turn to get in or out. So that gives you just that turn for your wheelbase. Here's another one that is a bit of a conversation. Shade accessory structures other than tents. Maybe, I don't know what a tent is in this situation. I think camping may be located between the side setback line and the principal building, and when located as such, shall comply with the setback requirements for the principal building. To me, that sounds like you do not have to be behind the rear facade of the structure, but do need to meet principal building setbacks, not accessory building setbacks. A very odd situation to try to interpret and enforce. Guest house As a reminder, the city does not permit ADUs. We are in the vicinity of a military airport. They do have density maximums. We do allow guest houses, which cannot be, leased out separately. Family home. Guest house may be located in the area between the side yard setback and the principal building, and between the front yard setback and the principal building. Essentially saying you can use your side yard, not just the backyard, for guest house. And when located as such, shall comply with the setback requirements for the principal building, almost similar to the shade situation. 9, rear setbacks on properties with side yard view fences shall be equal to or greater than the length of the view fence portion of the side yard wall. Another one that's very unique situation. A lot of the houses that back to the courses, the golf courses, have view fencing between the neighbors. Once upon a time, that was the norm for houses being built in, around the courses. That hasn't always been the case. Some people have modified those walls as well. So if you are essentially have a neighbor or your property that has that side yard view fence, I'm probably not going to go in your backyard to measure that. But if it's an 80-foot view fence, that's an 80-foot setback. That's another one that's a bit burdensome is trying to enforce and regulate on. So just as far as I've already talked through this, but just to talk about it, what does opaque perimeter fence mean? And number 2, height less than the height of the opaque fence and is not visible from public areas or neighboring properties. Well, then again, we're into subjectivity, not objectivity. Let's just combine all of our conversations lately. What is a public area? Is the golf course public or is it private? Is a park public? Yes, that one I'm sure of. A golf course, I can't just go onto the golf course and play frisbee. So is that a public space or not? Neighboring properties. If I have a 2-story house and I can look down, is that allowed or not? Fortunately, we don't have very many 2 stories to worry about. The other one, what is a shade accessory structure? We have it defined as an unenclosed accessory structure that provides shade. I don't think you can use the word in the definition usually, but what we did. Now is that I could say that's a pergola, that's a ramada, those all provide shade. So how do you define that? And I don't think it is our intent to proliferate sail panels or canvas sort of situations. So again, another one that's part of the conversation tonight to try to make sense of. Questions so far?
Any questions? Seeing that?
Gone. The other 2 standards that come into play and is part of our conversation tonight is height. So accessory structure shall not exceed the height of the principal building or 15 feet in height, whichever is less. I don't know that we have any structures less than 15 feet in height. That'd be real impressive. A little mid-century Rambler, perhaps, that's less than 15. But generally speaking, 15 is the limit in what we see. Lot coverage. So no accessory structure, combinations of structures, shall occupy more than 25% of the area lying between the rear of the principal building and the rear of the property line, or exceed 500 square feet in area, whichever is less. No accessory structure shall cause the maximum lot applicable to the lot to be exceeded. Excuse me. So this came up in DRB recently. There was a belief that you get 1 accessory structure per lot, and that is contrary to how this is written as far as the combination of structures. Now, I have an example, and I wonder if it's on the next page. Nope, we'll get to it. That some people have more than 1 structure. And in your packets tonight, you notice it's broken down by number of structures. We have someone with 6 accessory structures. Again, if it doesn't go beyond what is permitted in subnote F, is that a problem or not? I don't have an opinion. There's also, besides our zoning code, the village and its 14 amendments to its zoning, this little nugget came up in phase 1. So think on Village Parkway before you make the turn. So essentially where Millennium High School is. So anything north of Millennium High School is phase 2. Single-family residential lots that back up subtract H, S, and T as referenced on the plat and have a minimum of 8,500 square feet and a minimum depth of 100 and a minimum width of 70. So if you meet all those, you can have an accessory building located in the rear with a 0-foot rear yard setback. Essentially, against the course is the easiest way for that to be set. I don't know why it's so wordy. In such cases, the minimum side yard setback for the accessory building shall be at least 5 feet, like it is in zoning code. In subsequent phases, meaning phase 2 to the north of Millennium, lots meeting above minimum size, depth, and width criteria may have accessory buildings located in rear yard setbacks only upon approval of additional drainage way, pathways, or parks tracks of similar size as tracks H, S, and T. This is exhaustive as far as trying to find solutions for folks that want to improve their lots. Speaking of village, the one on the right, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5.5 structures, 2 of which are not in the rear, 2 of which are on the side. I don't think that this is too much. Again, I don't mean to show my hand because this is the conversation is for the 7 of you. However, this is an example of a design review board's question as far as is it one or is it multiple? We have a resident that has done a bit of research for me, quite frankly, and I'm thankful to share the photos provided in this conversation of all sorts of different examples of accessory structures and how they may or may not meet. You can see like the one on the left is a corner lot. So in that situation, that would be one by the books that is in no means permissible. The one on the right isn't necessarily an accessory structure, but how do we define batting cage and batting nets or tennis? I'm not sure what sport they're playing. Here's another corner lot as far as, actually, I think they're both corner lots if I think about it. Again, above the fence line, clearly visible. The one on the right appears to maybe have a little bit more design aesthetic with the rest of the house. The one on the left appears to be, the Home Depot or Lowe's variety of tough shed. Here's 3 more. Again, is it multiple structures? Something we work on a lot in design review board is how do we permit accessory structures that aren't slump block? I can't just find slump block laying around in order to do that. That's outside of your purview, but just something to think about as far as any sort of future text amendment about accessory structures. Some of these, and I had this conversation with Joe earlier today, some of these may predate the city being a city, quite frankly. Some of these might be before 1987. I don't know. The other thing I don't know yet is Rena and I will go through all 482 of these against the DRB files we have over the past 28 years to see how many have been approved. If they were approved by DRB, does that permit them from being exempt from zoning code standards? I don't know that either. But this is just the start of the conversation. There's more homework to be done, quite frankly. Just more examples. Oh, here's an alley situation on all 3 of these actually are against the alley, but not for garage purposes. I'll pause before we go into our comparison cities with any additional questions being wanted to ask.
According to your records, when was the last time that section 31 was adopted?
So, Commissioner Ali, thank you. I neglected to say that. The last time it was changed, I think it was in 2010 or 2012. The old standard was 10-foot side, 10-foot rear setbacks. That has then been reduced for the past 13 to 15 years down to 5. But before that, that was the standard since the start.
Okay, because I believe that we addressed accessory structures not too long ago, about 3-4 years ago. Do you recall that?
That we discussed size, but I don't know if they were where, I don't know if they were voted.
I know that there was a question regarding height, and I know that Matthew had to get involved, and he made a decision, and then there was an appeal, and then it was overruled with regard to like the height of a structure and, the height of a fence. And I know that it related to
Mhm.
section 31, because it ended up kind of becoming a big deal on my street anyway. And so that's part of the reason why I asked. So what is the situation? What are we going to do if in fact a lot of these structures exist and they're obviously not in compliance and they have been there for 20, 30 years?
Mhm.
Are we going to grandfather them in, or is this something where we as a city, we're gonna make them tear it down? I know that like about 10, 15 years ago, if there wasn't complaints related to zoning violations,
Mhm.
they stayed the way that they were. And I know there was a lot more activity in the more recent years regarding enforcement. So that's kind of what I'm wondering, what the expectation is of us.
Oh, Randy, if I may quickly, Commissioner Alvey, I think you're referring to screening of non-principal uses that came up 3 or 4 years ago, and that was regarding recreational vehicles and the setbacks with that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
I think
Matthew,
we also discussed like setbacks with accessory
Okay,
structures.
I don't
because know
remember
my
that.
neighbor had to move his shed, that he only had it in place for like 3 months. But this had
he
just
was
been-
in the setbacks, and that was the issue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I think I captured all your questions, and if I miss one, please let me know.
Oh.
So
Sorry.
it's okay. I was trying to answer the first one, but then there was another one after. Okay, so any structure that predates the city is grandfathered because I have no regulation over what the county may or may not have done before we were incorporated. I need to also trim down this list for anything that has been approved by DRB already, though I still need a legal opinion on if DRB approved an illegal location, does that grandfather? Because DRB is not charged with reviewing it for zoning compliance. They're only charged with doing a design compliance. So that's another thing we need to determine. We've had conversations with our residents lately that RENA essentially has folks who volunteer their time to find enforcement issues. And there is a bit of additional proactivity instead of reactivity at this time to ensure fairness across the board. I think it's the easiest way to say that part. As far as options go, everything is on the table.
Okay.
There isn't any determination made. Joe and I have been talking. I don't have a conclusion reached. The 7 of you and our 7-member council will guide me as far as next steps.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions?
All right. Us and our friends, and I tried to fit all this, but it did get a little small. It is part of the packet that our residents have this evening as well. So there are some consistencies with our friends. You can see as far as minimum building separation, let's just go column to column. So column 1, 10 feet for us. And then it gets a little inconsistent. So Avondale, Goodyear, Peoria, I could not find very clear standards that related to separation of buildings. Buckeye has a 0-foot separation if it's open structure. And again, I'm not the building official, but how do you make sure that every open structure is non-flammable and not combustible? I just don't know if we can determine that with any sort of certainty. For side yard, rear yard, pretty consistent with 5 foot for Avondale, for Buckeye. Again, Buckeye has an allowance down to 3 feet if it's a 10-foot height, 5 feet for anything larger. I'm on columns 2 and columns 3, just working our way down. Goodyear does a step back, essentially, 0 at the wall, 1 foot of setback for every height, every foot above the line. That is, not to nerd out too much, but that's why buildings in New York do what they do to let light get all the way to the streets. Because if everything was a giant block structure, you'd be walking around in the shade. So this is that same sort of mentality that as the structure increases in height, it's further away from you so that you are not blocked from sun going into your yard. Peoria has a staggered sort of situation where it's 0 if it's 8 feet or less. And this is probably the most lax, I say, of all the standards. 9 feet in height is 3 feet, 10 feet in height is principal setbacks, which, that's 15 to 20 feet away. The other weird caveat with Peoria specifically is any structure less than 300 square feet does not require design review, which that's a fairly large, tough shed you get from Home Depot sort of situation, which I thought was radical. Surprise, same 5-foot setbacks, but maybe increases required by the building or fire codes. In essence, again, if the fire marshal says it's not combustible, then maybe it stays at the 5-foot setback instead of less. Just working our way down the columns, down to size. 500 is ours. Avondale, Buckeye, and Peoria are lot coverage. Essentially, what that means is your accessory structure can take up as much as the backyard as what is permitted for the lot coverage. Some other jurisdictions, I should say, use lot coverage instead of setbacks to basically create the building envelope. Your house is 20% of your lot, then you get another 20% that can be an accessory structure, and then you're done. You can't have anything further. Goodyear is just 25% of the yard, which essentially not an and or situation. Avondale is up to 1,000 square feet. The other thing to keep in mind with these sorts of situations is all of these other jurisdictions have the ADU requirement by state law. Again, we didn't have to change our laws because of our vicinity of a military airport. All these other cities are not necessarily within, the GDC, in some situations, the graduated density concept, nor the accident protection zone, APZ, or the noise contours at 65, 55, and 45 decibels. Sometimes I'm an airport planner, but please don't quiz me later. The last thing is on max height. Pretty much consistently low, except for Buckeye, which is the same as the primary structure, which thinking Buckeye RV garage, probably more prevalent than other situations. Same with Peoria. Peoria has RV garages that are prevalent in those sorts of situations as well. Now, all of this has caveats, which is all the fun language I get to read and write and review. All these sorts of situations have this, that, yes, no, if then that sort of situations. Buckeye also has anything greater than 225 square feet does not requires design review. 225 or less does not need design review. So this is essentially just an overview of other cities. I have one more slide I wanted to show you before we open it up to ideas and conversation, and that is, well, how are we doing? Right now, there are numerous folks with numerous violations. Again, of the 482 we could find, we reviewed about 2,800 homes, and we did aerial photography to determine, is that a pool or is that a shed or what is that? So by no means is this comprehensive, but it's pretty dang close to comprehensive. There's different situations. Some don't meet the 10-foot separation. Some don't meet the side yard. Some don't meet the rear yard. Some don't meet either setback. Some don't meet the setback or separation. So some of these are all violations, some violations. What it generally means is of the 482, 383 have some violation amongst it, or 3/4 of them, which is a real bummer in a situation that we haven't been able to stay on top of since the jump. Because now we have situations where some folks have had these structures for 10 years, 20 years illegally. And I say illegally not as a arm of the police, just as far as the language of the law as written and as required for all residents. Again, I have no conclusion tonight, only information. I hope in our conversation forthcoming that we have opinions of the matter. I'll take your opinions of the matter and present those to Jen in January to City Council, and we'll have a very similar situation and conversation at that time. And happy to answer any questions.
Let's open it to questions, thoughts, comments. Go ahead, Commissioner Fix.
I just quickly reviewed the address list that you provided, and there are a few homes on there that I have very good knowledge of that have never been touched since the day they were built. That are on that list, so. Does that go back to before, when was Litchfield incorporated as a city? Do you remember the year?
Of course. 1987.
Seven, okay. Then, yes, these were all probably constructed prior to that. Most of them on that list.
I didn't hear a question, but I'll.
Well, I understood it.
Okay.
You helped me with it.
Thank you. So, well, Commissioner Fix, the other part of that is I appreciate your knowledge of that situation. What I will have to do is from this list, go through all my files. Once those have been exhausted, review the rest from looking at old photos, basically find aerials from 1986. Those aren't going to be the best example. So it may be a situation if, and again, I don't have a conclusion, if enforcement is requested and determined to be the next step, we'd essentially send letters to all of these homes saying, we are aware that you may have a situation that it may be violating setbacks or building separation. Please provide us with any information about its location, when it was built, did you receive a permit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If nothing further can be found, then we'll have to think about how to address that if I don't have any knowledge and they don't have any knowledge. I don't know if you could, it's not like a tree where I can cut it and see how many rings it has, but we'll have to figure out something in that situation.
Do you have any knowledge of other cities having this kind of problem and what their resolution was?
Commissioner Fix, we have a unique opportunity to look at the whole city. There's no other city where I could have had an intern spend 4 months reviewing aerial images and just spend all of her day looking at this, that, and the other. But fortunately, she got hired out of this, and now she goes and works as a consulting firm because of her hard work. So maybe there's a silver lining there. I don't know of anyone that has done a holistic look at that sort of thing. I know that there are some situations where sweeps are done in certain areas of the city. I know that almost every other city has HOAs as well, where this is not as opportunistic to happen, quite frankly, as those sorts of quasi-governmental associations police themselves.
Good, okay. I noticed half of these houses, I think there's a development, that's right, I think it's in the village, greens, cachet. So the houses that are listed here, they violate those development agreements or these?
So, Chair, if we put changes to zoning code in a development agreement, I'd be disappointed, quite frankly. I know it does happen from time to time. However, it's what it means is I have a zoning code. I have 14 amendments to the village. I have development agreements. I have other ordinances as adopted through rezonings. I have PD narratives. I don't have one book that gives me the answers. I have a library of books that may have the answer or may conflict with one another. So yes, maybe to your point of where you're heading, I need to review those documents as well to determine if there was changes to it. Like the village example, one of the 14 amendments made that change.
What are your comments? Go ahead.
Have there been recent complaints about structures, or what is bringing this to us?
Yes, I'm sorry if I hadn't made that clear. There have been recent inquiries. There have been recent code enforcement cases as well. And there are folks, and I don't want to speak for the residents, but I've talked to these residents. There are residents that feel strongly in both directions as far as let the sleeping dog lie or go after it. I hope I paraphrased that okay. No one throw tomatoes. So we have had 2 enforcement cases recently that have essentially been on pause until we can have this conversation with you, until we can have the conversation in January with council. And from that, we will continue enforcement or pursue an amendment.
Are they related to structures that were recently placed there, or structures that could have possibly been there for 40 years?
I have an example of both.
Okay.
So I have one that was placed this year, and one that has been there for a number of years.
Okay.
Mr. Garrett?
Question on that then. The one that you say 40 years. How do we have any ground to stand on to say that you've got a violation? They've been there, they've been allowed, and you know, if you're gonna do that, then you have to go through and do it for everybody, and you'll lose your job. You know, it'll be, because if it all falls on your shoulders,
Yes.
then the masses are gonna come after you and chase you out of town, because I mean, it's, having lived in Paradise Valley. And there for 30 plus years, and being in contact with, and
Great.
going in and watching and seeing, and aware of these situations. And, you know, because around and all that stuff over there, everybody was pushing the limits. And I guess probably the biggest example of that in current day is the Ritz-Carlton. You don't know anything about it.
I do. That one I follow closely. So 40 years may have been a bit of an exaggeration if I could. If it's 40 years, it's predating the city, we have no rights. Just to reinforce what I told Commissioner Phipps. I don't know what that number is. I really hesitate on a time set. You're good, you're not good. We did that for some reason. We did that memorialization in place for walls. It's like it says in our code like June 6, 2010. If you've constructed the wall before June 6, 2010, here are your standards. If it's after June 6, 2010, here are your standards. I don't know if that makes sense. And to your other point, my resume is always up to date. I know there are some law firms. There are some law firms that are expanding their land use and entitlement practices. So I would be just fine. And as we've seen and just to finish the thought there, as we've seen recently, I am not the zoning administrator. The city manager is the zoning administrator. I only act on his behalf.
Sometimes they don't care if you're the actor or the actress.
I'm available for whatever comes my way based on this conversation.
Mr. O'Connor?
Hi.
I have a couple of questions. First off, so this list that you guys put together of all the homes. Am I missing, like, how do I know which ones are in violation?
So
All of them.
yeah, I should, okay. Commissioner O'Connor, there are 482, 99 of which have no violations. I did not highlight the ones that are fine. I've only quantified the ones that are not fine. My version of this Excel spreadsheet is colorful notes everywhere because I had to manually go one by one because formulas are tough sometimes with Excel. This is only a comprehensive list. This is not the analysis, I guess, to your point.
Okay. And so these violations we're saying are just, you're saying these are all violations based on today? Because we don't know about the past.
Commissioner O'Connor, based on today's requirements, 5-foot setbacks, 10 foot from the house, this list includes all accessory structures, some 99 of which have no violations because they're greater than these minimum numbers. 383 of these line items have one or more violation.
And do not, so you're saying that they either are not 5-foot setback from the side or the rear, or it's not a 10-foot from the house.
That's correct.
Okay. Because I spent many years on DRB, because I know data, like this came up constantly.
Yes.
And I feel like we were pretty judicious about only approving based off of that standard. So just quickly looked at the analysis on what's happened over the last 10 years, or like, are some of these issues ones that have been in the last 10 years?
Commissioner O'Connor, I'm glad to hear, because you know, as you guys were talking about earlier, sometimes this role was from someone who didn't work for the city and didn't even live in the country, and so there's a huge gap in my backlog of knowledge that's in a filing cabinet, and so we have a tremendous amount of work still ahead of us to digitize and review all of that historic knowledge, which is why I appreciate having tenure on this board and commission so we can have these conversations and help me get educated. So I appreciate hearing that.
Okay. And then I did want to mention, I've always been a proponent that I feel like the 500 square feet is too restrictive.
Okay.
I felt, and I think we've kind of talked about this in the past, so either the DRB or maybe it was when we did it, yeah, that I feel like some component of lot coverage is more fair because, you know, we do have lots that are very sizable, so I think it's restricted to that. So yeah, I believe that I would be someone that would support in certain cases where it's fair that it could be larger and based more off of
Okay.
So I guess let's start there. Does anybody else have an opinion on maximum size with lot coverage? I also like the lot coverage idea. Does anybody else have maximum size thoughts? We can give some feedback on. Seeing nobody else.
The way to go, because at home, it's already taken every percentage of the lot. What's your extra structure to be larger than the primary?
So to be thorough, when you say the percentage of the lots, of the lot percentage. Now, when we're talking about separate structures. Is it what percentage of the lot is left or the total lot?
So thank you for asking, Commissioner Conklin. So our lot coverage maximums are between 30 and maybe a little less, and maybe 45% of the lot. So I don't want to do this math. If it's a 10,000 square foot lot, what is under roof, regardless if it's the house, the garage, the porch, the patio, the accessory structure, that counts towards the max. So if it's a 30% lot coverage, it's a 10,000 square foot lot, 3,000 square feet has a roof. Some cities have gotten into situations where, well, what is a pergola? And if it's dappled shade and there's light casting through it, that's a really slippery slope as far as, well, if it's 1 foot separation, it's 50%. If it's 3 feet separation, it's 20%. And just doing all that sort of math every time is harder, I think. And who's to say if they cover the pergola or the dapples, I guess we say, it just makes it easier for everyone just to say that counts as full coverage.
Any other thoughts on maximum size? Kind of give some feedback.
Did I understand you say this pergola is under roof, is that what you're?
Commissioner Fix, yes. So if it has any sort of roof, regardless of how spread apart the cross members are, that is counted towards coverage as a full solid surface.
Well, the maximum size. We'll go to height next. Do we have any thoughts on height? So like the setbacks, the maximum height. The big carriage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I like it can't be taller than the house, that's kind of common sense. And then I do like the idea that you have to move away from your neighbor the higher it goes.
The step back.
Yeah, step back, I think that's.
I agree with Commissioner Honorable, but. Anybody else? Step back sites, yeah.
Would be depending on where it sits on the lot. Because that's, we don't have cookie cutter lots in the city. So it's more or less, each one is its unique situation. And to try and put together a standard that says, well, it's this. You know, all of a sudden, somebody buys 2 lots, tears the house down, and builds one big thing. Or they'll take the big one, tear it down, put the children. So I think that's about the only reality that we're gonna be seeing here the next 5 to 10 years.
Any other thoughts on heights? Setbacks or height or anything?
Call that setback and step back, correct?
So it's a cheeky way of saying it, just to clarify what word means which. Setbacks is what everyone always knows of. A step back. My rep career is my side hustle, is essentially an increasing setback that goes just like stair steps, just if it's easier to think of.
I am in favor of setback and a setback with the setback. With consideration to others' neighbors, you see a lot of growth now these days, especially. You have to consider the neighbors that are in close proximity, and some of them that I have seen have been somewhat obnoxious to some of the other neighbors, and I think we have to hold that in special consideration. That it's not just the property owner's home, it is her blood, but it's also in view of what that is. Proximity.
Chair, I have 2 more conversation starters. If that's
Go ahead, please. I was doing the next thing I said. What else do you want feedback on?
The street side. So a street side setback being needed to be met for structures, I would say, hasn't been enforced consistently. I guess that's what I'll say. The idea that a 20-foot front setback and a 20-foot street side setback essentially eliminates accessory structures from public view and keeps them on the interior side of the lot. It makes sense. However, I would counter my point to also tell you that generally we had situations where houses aren't pushed against the street because you still have to make a turn to get in your driveway. So there may not be an opportunity on the interior side yard to put that structure, which is why we see so many here on the street side, because those yards are bigger. Now, as far as its visual impact, I would assume I'm sorry, but the visual impact is why we didn't want it on the street side. However, for usable space, it's where they often end up. So does anyone have an opinion one way or the other, if that is something that we should review or change?
We're going for a raising hand, or is that no, just okay?
Well, I think I would hope that in the past, I'm trying to think again, go back to the DRB days. if a situation like that came up, we would do variance, right? I mean, that would be,
Depending on what, in the days of the DRB and the PSC,
Mhm.
both of which I've been on for a really long time.
Yes.
And, my sister was out visiting, and she's kind of saying, you know, it's getting kind of boring, you know, and she goes, why do you do it? And I said, I didn't know.
Okay.
But the one thing about it, is common all through all of it, is it really got down to how long had it been there? Well, first of all, was there any kind of a record of when it got there,
Mhm.
whatever? And a lot of these cases, what little information there was bad or wrong,
Right.
or had disappeared, when you didn't have a great fire in Chicago, and things just
Mhm.
kind of went away.
Mhm.
And people tend to live a long time in Litchfield Park, many in the very same house they started with.
Yes.
Others want to build bigger and bigger,
Yes.
at which point then they're wanting to expand the RV garage.
Yes.
The thing that always seemed to be a problem were RV garage and where they were,
Mhm.
and decorative things. Pergolas didn't originally come up that often. I mean, might have to call it a remodel, you know, the same thing.
Yes.
And even if it was sticking above the wall, it was a pergola, and you kind of go to your neighbor, you like your neighbor, if they have a pergola in their backyard, why do I care?
Mhm.
And a lot of it got down to why do we care? And then the other thing that came up were people that moved into the south part and specifically moved there because they were under the mistaken idea that there was no zoning, they could do whatever they wanted, and the realtors, you know, allegedly didn't tell them anything or did tell them what was wrong.
Mhm.
So you go from a really big boat that's sitting over on a big estate lots, has a nice big RV thing, nobody sees it, there's no problem. And you got somebody that wants to put a boat that nearly that big in their backyard over on the south. And all the problems seem to be generated out of square footage, literally. You know, a boat on the other side of the street, you know, on the back end where the really big houses are, nobody cares. And you get on this side, and now they have a boat out in the driveway, you know, sitting there, which is right next to the neighbors, and now you get the thing where they come out. I was on the Arrowhead Grant, the first design review board, if you will, to
Mhm.
review things that were happening. And it was phenomenal stuff that was going on. You got all these houses that are 2,500 square feet or 3,000. And it's all upstairs. And when you got this little tiny thing downstairs, literally people pulling their boat in, and you come out around the door and there's this boat like right here. And here's your door. Now, we've never done that. But the bottom line, the thing that really seems to trigger is something like a boat or an RV. How big is it and where is it gonna be put? Because if it's on the estate lots, I don't think anybody necessarily cares. But we've had some incidents over the last couple of years where people were quite adamant they had been assured that there was no problem by the realtor ones. And then now saying we have no control over the realtors, although amazing is the way to do that. So I think, I'll get off this, but I think the real issue, of all of it was what makes sense right now. We don't have a good record to determine what happened. You know, this is a neighbor that everybody likes this neighbor, they're not causing problems, they just want to put a pergola
Mhm.
in their backyard. And they're maybe not wanting to tear down a pergola that they've already put in.
Right.
And so I think over the years, the DRB and the PNZ did the best they could with the information that was
Yes.
available. Which then drops it back to the thing, well, what does common sense say? And usually that works pretty well until you want to pretty long do a criminal investigation of somebody. Or their, you know, their add-on to their house that was there 10, 15 years ago. So anyway, however all of this turns out, I am in favor of a reasonable approach that does not create huge turmoil, and we can find a way to do something to keep everybody happy. Because when I first got on with P and Z, it was when the golf course was doing something down on the golf course, and the word got out. We had meetings where it was only on there, where somebody was gonna give a report.
Mhm.
Where they were lined up outside, like the Frankenstein movie with the pitchforks and farmers.
Mhm.
And I had a wife and somebody that I knew pretty well, who came up to me at one of these, it was like my first night on the job or whatever. And she goes, you know, Dave, she goes, my husband and I have always considered you a good friend. I hope after tonight, I'll still be able to do that. So, oh, where'd that come from? You know? So I don't want to go back to those kind of days. So,
Yeah, I-
I'll get off it. Just to say that's what was happening. You know, we did what we could.
Vice Chair, I think I can add to your story and answer Commissioner O'Connor's question as well. Because you can always apply for a variance. I can't prevent an application of variance. We've had that sort of situation come up a few times, but a variance follows 4 criteria outlined in state law. We verbatim put it in our zoning code. You can't self-impose the situation. In negligence of fact, in negligence of knowing the law isn't criteria that meets any of the 4 requirements. Anyway, this sort of thing happened a lot with house setbacks. Because the county had done the platting and creating the lots, the Board of Adjustment in 1987 has a stack of files like this. Because everyone suddenly wanted to use their lot and couldn't because we had adopted a code that didn't comply with the platting. So at the time, I think it was, I don't remember if it was pre-2000 or post-2000. We, the city, had developed an administrative variance sort of procedure that basically allowed to revert back to the platted setbacks instead of code setbacks. Maybe to your point, sort of common sense, and if you can't do a variance, there's something between that. I'll talk to my defense to find a workable solution to basically acknowledge that something may not be in conformance with today, but may have been previously, but at the same point to our conversation, the old standard was more restrictive and we've reduced since then. So I don't know.
I can remember some situations where in certain areas, like some of the homes that are east of the wigwam, where you had things that were, some of the houses were on county zoning and some were on whatever, and somebody came in and applied. And if I remember right, they wanted to actually build something from before, which they had to, which everybody were there. And it was like, well, why can't I do this? Because, 2/3 of the block are this way.
Right.
And it was like, well, our code doesn't allow it. But it was what they wanted to do was literally going to match what was in the neighborhood where they were running into administrative problems. So anyway, it seems like every couple of years it comes up, there's this huge turmoil, everybody gets really upset. And then at some point, it just sort of stops. I mean, that's kind of the way it's been. So all I would say, if we're gonna do it, then we need to do it in some common sense way. There may not be as many houses as we think are gonna be affected by this. They're already there.
Wonderful.
So.
Did you have more on your side of the setback? As you were kind of talking about? No, the only other thing I wanted to mention was that, again, going to PRB, I remember it as we normally would allow one structure. You kind of mentioned that.
Yeah.
I always thought that was prohibitive or restrictive again. So it kind of goes to like the lot covers that. I don't see why you could have a guest house in a pergola. I didn't like the idea that you had to choose one or the other.
Thank you.
Because you did mention that the code does say one, or like it's a little gray.
Commissioner O'Connor, I've had that same conversation with the other chair, I can't think of her last name right now, the chair of DRB. Charneski, thank you. I didn't want to call her by her first name in this form. With Chair Charneski having that same memory of that, I go to the subnote F, no accessory structure or combination of structures, and that's my end of conversation sort of situation, especially when we have, where is he? Our friend with 5 or 6. So your staff planner have never restricted more than one or viewed that as a prohibition based on my reading of that section code.
You're asking for some feedback on setbacks or
So,
street side. Do you have any comments on street side setbacks for accessory dwellings? Not accessory structures. Sorry.
thank you.
So it's on the street side, right now it requires the dwelling for the, again. Structure. We push back farther. The question is, do we like that, or do we want it to stay the same 5 feet? Do we have any concerns or questions or thoughts on distance between how big the setback should be if it's on the street side? Front side, or kind of the side of the street side.
I personally think when it is visible from the street, I think we do want to try to encourage it to be on the other side. And again, I feel like I would rather have it be that requirement than if for some reason they can to go for a variance.
Okay.
That's just fine.
It's interesting because it's on the street side, there's not a neighbor there.
Right. Yeah.
Not posing a problem on the neighbor, it's just everybody just driving by. I guess I don't even know that or it's just people are driving by 30 miles an hour. They're less than somebody living there next to it. Absolutely.
I have one last feedback request, Chair. And this one I think is maybe the hardest to explain, and I don't know that I have a good. I'm just going to pick a house. Right. So the situations. Let me see if I can find one. Just driving around. The ones that back to the course that have view fencing between the neighbors.
Some bird. Back up to
Go to there.
yeah, that's what's good.
The idea being that I can't tell from the shadows. If you have a view fence between neighbors,
They all have great ones.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
We show Oregon this now.
So let's say that it's 147 feet of view fencing. By letter of law, rear setbacks on properties with side yard view fences shall be equal to or greater than the length of the view fence portion of the side yard wall. I don't know how to be successful in this for anyone. However, I understand why it was written. Once upon a year, it was believed that you could enjoy a view of the course through your neighbor's yard. Some people haven't liked this idea and have planted hedges accordingly so that everyone has their slice of the course. Historically, though, it was believed that you could look in either direction through your neighbor's backyards to have a panoramic view. This would essentially, just doing math, eliminate accessory structures back into the course in all situations. But ironically, in the red course, for the village situation, it's a 0-foot setback, you can be right up against the course, which I'm not sure why we went the opposite way in that.
But the red course, I don't believe they have blue fences. Like, I do believe you're talking about the big houses in the village.
Yes.
Like.
Jasmine, Cloverfield, Village Parkway.
Yeah, those are raw.
On the sides?
On the sides, yeah.
Okay.
All the way inside the back, so I think that's.
Okay.
On the blue course, we can have fences.
Right. Right. It really, it varies. Some people have a little, some people have nothing, some people have little walls. So this is the hardest one, I think, for me to handle. Because if we do want to stick with letter of law through this conversation, through city council conversation, that would mean anyone with accessory structures against the course, and I think we had one. I don't have my whole numbers memorized, but this is the one on Village, I'm sorry, on Villanueva. As you work your way around Camelback Park, I can think of it in my head as the first one on the south side of the street. This would be a situation where, I'm sorry, it's right at the corner. No, not Lolo. Northeast corner of the city, next to Camelback Park. So the first one on Villanueva as it goes from north to west. I don't know why I have a map. I'm sorry.
Is it Torno?
This guy? So that picture I know is this shed right here. However, he has no neighbor. So again, there's these nuances, and I just don't know how we want to be successful or how we want to grant one but not the other. Who gets more, who gets less based on their situation. I don't have the solution, but if anyone has a thought on the matter, I'd appreciate it regarding number 9.
I don't personally feel that anyone should be able to build a structure that block a neighbor's view, like with the view fence, that would block their view. Hedges are a different animal, but not a structure. And there was one recently approved that's, I think it's a 10-foot wall. On the other side of the wall is TV and a barbecue area. Aesthetically, it's very nice, but you're on this side of the wall. But if you're on the other side of the wall, you now, as that neighbor, look at a wall, and then you factor in people on the golf course hitting their balls in the yard, ricocheting straight back into your house. And that was just approved recently, so I think that needs to be wrangled in.
Okay.
With the desire for people to want to have these outdoor kitchens and, you know, these elaborate type things at the edge of their properties. I think we address that.
So does it make a difference though if there is that hedge?
Well, I mean, the fence is there, you just plant a hedge to give yourself privacy, but not.
Right. I'm thinking of like if you have a hedge or you put a hedge, then are you think it's okay to then do it? You can't see it?
That if you build a structure with a view fence hedge behind it.
Well, like if you have a view fence, like you want to, then we can stop you from building a hedge, right?
Right.
So if there wasn't a hedge, would it be then okay to have a structure?
Well, the structure is gonna. The height of the structure is gonna be taller than the hedge. The hedge usually just is at the fence line. So 5 feet. And the structure, in this case, is at least 10 feet. High, I'm talking.
Yeah.
I think there also needs to be clarification on view fences too, because I know that there are properties that do like line up, there might be a house that sits facing this way, golf course is over here, view fence, view fence, view fence, view fence, but they're not officially classified by the city as view fences. So the neighbor 3 houses down, if it's an open fence, they can see the golf course, but it's technically not considered a view fence, even though it's a fence. So I think that that's something that we need to consider too. And I think that however we proceed, I think we also need to consider the general plans, put a strong emphasis on open space in Litchfield Park. That is like a ruling guide that we have. And however, I've got to say, I'd rather look at a fence than look at a neighbor's, you know, cars or shed or anything like that. If that's the option, you know, if I've got a view fence there and I'm going to be looking at cars parked there or a shed before I can even see the golf course, I would rather look at a wall and plant my own plants there, you know, so So I mean, I think open space really needs to sort of guide our decisions with whatever we do, but I mean, like that shed that's next to nothing, no neighbors, it's
Right.
like, I don't have a problem with that, I mean, and I don't know, I don't think anybody else would have a problem with that, but when things are placed in people's yard that sort of encroach on their neighbors, that's where we've got a problem.
Mhm.
So,
Any feedback on view fences?
I would agree, I think we need to have an accurate description as to what we're gonna call a view fence. Or, I mean, we're gonna run into other issues as to what can be built and what is it, you know, it starts with what is a view fence? If we don't have an accurate description of what a view fence is, then we can't determine what can be built behind. What is no fence, right?
If you, okay, I'll complicate matters further because we had a couple of similar situations. If the media wall wasn't in your example, Commissioner Fix, would the problem still exist if it's only 4 columns and not opaque? Okay, because we have a few examples from other cities that have different requirements or standards if it's 4 walls and a roof or just columns. So that'll be something we can certainly consider and ask council the same question.
I got a question. So if you have a view fence, are you able to close that view fence? Yeah, it's gonna be the same thing.
The Board of Adjustment has been pretty busy lately on a number of houses on Old Litchfield Road that have requested variances to not have view fence against the path. And this is exactly the example from the June 6, 2010, before or after is your standards on walls. Ironically, for whatever reason, before you could do a solid wall, after you can do a view fence. Just to stay on the soapbox for a bit, the idea that you have a view fence is to not create corridors of nefarious activity. If you have eyes on the situation, people don't linger and hooligans get up to shenanigans back there, just to excuse the language. We've had, I think, 3 variances approved in the past few years to create solid walls. They vary. One had a pool was concerned. One had dogs that were unfriendly and didn't want situations, constant barking and nuisance against the pathway. Those 3 were approved. Ironically, we have our first solid wall to view wall fence conversion on Yano, just north of Scout Park. That house, the Campbells, moved in and tore down the solid wall and put in a view fence. So I forgot the question. Do you have to have a view fence? Was that the question?
You convert your side wall. The ones on Old Litchfield, those are all rear view.
That's correct. Yes.
So on the sides, you convert them from view to solid.
So
the answer is apparently yes.
The answer is yes. In my tenure of 18 months, and if this is it, this is it. I guess. In my tenure of 18 months, I have not required number 9 to be followed. In your staff planner's opinion, the idea that you could essentially have a voyeur situation into someone else's private residence is odd to me. I understand the idea, I understand the open space necessity, but the idea that you could not enjoy your private space in your yard without full view of everyone seems off to me. I understand from the course because that's what you pay for, but the idea that you could benefit from your neighbors and view into your neighbor's yard just didn't make sense to me. And I have not enforced this to letter of law in situations where we've had DRB requests.
You just had that many neighbors.
Sure. Yes, but to the point of does nice overrule law? No.
But if you don't put so many laws in place, then you don't have to have any issue. I mean, if you overregulate, that becomes a major. And so far as, we're establishing, we're nearing the end of anything else that can be done other than tear down, fire burns it down, or you just remodel the hell out of what you got. And so I'm beginning to feel that we're trying to overregulate space instead of having facts to work with. And take it a case at a time. And I think that there's enough neighbors that if they have word of this new person that moved in, they want to do this. In most cases, the neighbors will tell them, don't try and do that. Some people have. And, there's an issue just east of the east fence of the Wigwam. Right along that little road. And, people slide things in and all of a sudden, people come out of the woodwork, why are you doing that? I don't like this, I don't like that. So that little path is just and wait and see when it gets torn out, because I can't see how it absolutely stay there, so.
Okay.
So I'm not clear, or can you stop someone from building a wall that has a defense?
Based on number 9, yes. So number 9 says rear setbacks on properties with side yard view fences shall be equal to or greater than, which would say no accessory structures.
No, like if you're doing a view fence,
Yes.
they say, okay, I want to knock down the view fence and build a wall. Can you stop them from doing that? You being neighbors? No, you being like the city, like so. Can someone say, I don't want to do a view, I don't want to do this, I want to put a wall on?
So there's 2-part answer. One, if it's the side yards that do not affect section 30 walls, landscaping and fences, I don't have an objection to it. If it's a situation of a rear yard fence that has regulations in section 30, if they do want to do something different, they can go to Board of Adjustment and apply for a variance. And again, we've had 3 successful cases where people have either not done a view fence or taken out the view fence to put a wall instead. So there is an avenue for that. Is ultimately up to the Board of Adjustment whether it's supported or not.
I think my point is like, if someone can put a wall up and they have a view fence, they can put a wall up and they can do their structure. So I think that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, thank you. I was just getting there with the breadcrumbs. So Commissioner O'Connor, I appreciate it as far as.
So all the examples you gave, there's no second neighbor, so the view fence that we're talking about, the side view fences, are a shared view fence between 2 neighbors. All the examples you gave were all rear view fences and all served one property, or a side view fence that served one property.
Yes.
So we have any situations in which there is a view fence between 2 houses that one neighbor wanted to turn into a wall, a wall.
I have not come across it yet, but to your point, your staff planner would not turn down that request by a neighbor to enjoy their private yard. And then that would eliminate that additional regulation that number 9 describes in that situation.
That, or like if that neighbor would rather have them, like we could require them to build a wall. If that would be better for that neighbor, maybe too. Does that make sense?
Sure. And I will show a little more of my hand, something to think of leaving tonight. If there is a desire, and I've gathered your feedback and I understand the field, and I will present that to council accordingly. I will present 2 additional thoughts to them. There's 2 other things that could be done. We don't have to do. One, we could say, like the Peoria example, if it's 8 feet or less, 0 foot setback. And that sort of change would wipe out 300 of those violations about. that's an option. However, it's still the visual burden, it's still the encroachment, it's still a possible fire concern. The other option, and we've had this a few times at DRB, is for situations where you cannot meet the setbacks, construct a 1-hour fire. So if your accessory structure is too close to your neighbor, and that wall between the two neighbors needs to be a 1-hour firewall so that the fire does not jump. Or we've had situations in DRB recently where, because of unique lot considerations, it ended up being like a 9.5-foot separation. Well, in that situation, that's a 1-hour firewall because it doesn't meet the separation requirements anymore. But from a safety, life safety standpoint, health, safety, welfare, the general plan, we were able to find a creative solution that essentially skirts the separation but doesn't reduce life safety aspects. So both of those are options. The magic wand, 8 feet or less, eliminates a lot of these concerns, and everyone goes home happy or unhappy. Or there's the essentially the financial burden of you have to create a safe situation for you and your neighbor by constructing a 1-hour. So those are also options beyond enforcement options.
Wouldn't you say that the complaints are less about fire concern versus like visual concern?
Sure. Commissioner O'Connor, I'd say that that's consistent with what we've received. There are other cities as well that you could do an 8-foot wall. However, I don't think it's our intent to create fortresses between neighbors. We have a very strict 6-foot max on height. The thing is, no one can buy a shed anymore that's less than 6 feet tall. Most are pitched, so you don't smack your head as you walk into the shed, because all these are walk-in style nowadays. No one has the deck box next to your pool anymore for their sheds. They all have pitch roofs. So it's hard to find something that meets the screened accessory structure situation.
But there's a way to do it. I mean, you can have a lean-to that matches, the roof and the exterior of your home, and it looks as though, had always been there.
Yes, there's a good example that just got built on Campbell, or I forgot the other road name.
Campbell.
It's north of Bird. One of those blocks. Estero, maybe? No, I think it's Estero, maybe. A lean-to. Maybe. One of those two.
Would you say most of these problems, some of these are, to me, obviously in phase 2, which are much newer than they're over in Litchfield. Are these homes honestly primarily because of things they did after their home was built? Or is this list only for things that are, we'll say, after March? Because it's crazy that there are this many homes that were able to put in a pergola, put in a pool, put in all these things, and slide up the radar of the rules that were already in place.
Commissioner Fix, I don't have a good answer for that one. I will tell you there's a significant amount in Sunset Terrace, which is the newest neighborhood, which has a very strict HOA. In some of those situations, it's a very clear full Ramada house, and you could touch all three at the same time. You could have a foot in the pool, touch the pergola, touch the house at the same time. And it's an unfortunate situation that so many of these things that happen are identical. Like there's been times where I want to go to Home Depot and Lowe's, go to the parking lot, put a big thing, call the city first on all those sheds, because we do have regulations in this situation.
Well, primarily the contractors. I mean, I feel like the contractors are they applying for permits?
So yes, the ones we have approved, we find hopefully before. Most often people go to building first, I need a building permit, and then it gets kicked to me saying, no, you don't get a building permit until you go to DRB first. We've had one as recently as last week at DRB that was, I already started this, sorry about that. And we said stop work order. wait for DRB approval. So how the hows and the whys and the working in the middle of the night sort of thing, I don't know. I really don't know.
Could you, I'm gonna request that, are you, I mean, I know you can, but hopefully you're willing to. In your spreadsheet,
Yes.
could you, I'm trying to figure out the right word, segment them out into the different neighborhoods that we have? First, have it all aggregated together?
I can do my best.
I think it'd be interesting to know like where, like. Are most like, are there a lot of these in certain neighborhoods, like how? You know, we call this inside the park, like how many of these are inside the park, how many of these are in the villages, I think it first having it all aggregated.
Sure.
What else? Maybe that's valuable.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it might kind of tell the story as to when those were built. And what the theme might be of some of these structures and the age of or the date of construction in that portion of the nation.
And I have a suspicion that the ones that have HOAs are more inclined to have these as not as violations. Because I think they probably thought they could just do whatever they wanted in their HOA. Because I feel like, again, going back to the DRB, so many ones that we approved were inside the walls.
Yes.
That I think met the guidelines.
The good actors, I'd say. The ones that went through it correctly.
Yeah, and I remember specifically a couple ones that were in greens that, you know, we had to.
Yes.
Stop.
Yes. I can do that.
We were side defenses, does anybody have any more input on side defenses for city planner? Seeing none, is there another topic or anything else you want to put on?
Fair Faith,
Do you want feedback on the zero setback?
if you have it,
I find myself hard to support a zero setback.
okay.
I feel like.
Is there,
I will agree.
okay,
Like,
okay.
sorry, I think that's what's prompted my question to you is like, it would be interesting to me to know there's a common theme of the less than 5 feet in
Right.
certain areas versus others.
Okay, we can do so. Certainly the bulk of this is the 10-foot separation from the main house is primary defendant. And that may be something, you know, some of the other cities where is it combustible, is it non-combustible? Do I have to send, you know, the other Brian out to look at every single one and, you know, that seems pretty non-combustible, you're fine. And do that sort of thing. The other thing I really worries me is in these situations of these violations, if it does catch on fire, first question insurance asks, do you have a permit? No. Okay, not covered and never getting insurance again, which really worries me as far as people that take on as is situations that may not be aware of that sort of situation. I would think it behooves them to go through this correctly because I would never want to be in that situation of that liability. But
Well, the whole thing up.
yes.
BTR,
I have an initialism for that, but what is yours?
you know,
Well, that's
building them all over.
oh, okay.
The build to rent.
Yes, correct.
And look at how much they're cramming. I mean, if one of them goes on fire, if there is that much of an issue, and I have not even gone through one of them to see if they're sprinklers, but, you know.
So, Commissioner Derry, they are sprinkled because of the separation, because the cost of
There is no separation.
well, because of doing the 1 hour fire separation is so expensive for that many structures because they all have 4 walls instead of having shared walls. I'm just thankful I never have to review another one of those coming from other cities.
Wait till tomorrow, they keep building more.
There's no place for them here.
What is it?
Yeah.
There's what, three-
Water?
There's 3 big companies that are specializing in that, and then they've got a secondary market that
Yes.
moves them around.
Christopher Todd, Via,
Crazy
Hancock.
situation.
Yes, they're all friends.
Is there any other items you want some feedback on?
Good.
Brought up?
Chair Faith, and again, as mentioned at the start, this isn't, we don't have the fun. You have the hard work. I appreciate your hard work. RPG is more fun. DRB is more fun. This is the things that at some points matter to the most and affect the most amount of people. So I appreciate your time.
Great. Is there any final comments or feedback anybody wants to get in touch on?
Thank you for showing up and not having this. This is fun.
Thank you.
If you have feedback, I feel like this is such a huge problem. I don't see how to tackle it.
And that's the good part. I don't need to tackle it today. I'll have a very similar conversation with City Council. If there is consistent messaging across both, then we will come up with a solution. We will present that solution. If you like it, awesome, we'll move forward. If you don't, we'll revise and we'll keep going.
All right, we're done with the section, moving on to adjournment. So this meeting is adjourned. No, you gotta vote. So thank you.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Now it's adjourned.